Hey there, hi, I'm TechDweeb, and today, I think there's something wrong with my aspect ratio. I'm all square looking. That won't do. Can't enjoy something if it's not in the right aspect ratio. Hang on, let me fix this. I'm just gonna adjust my camera here. Hang on. Ah, there we go. Much better. Hey there, how's it going? I'm TechDweeb, welcome. Thanks for clicking on the video today. So, aspect ratios. What even are aspect ratios? That sounds like some kind of math term that a nerdy wizard would whisper before turning me into a rectangle. I invoke 4x3. Poof! Actually, this isn't bad. I like this. You're welcome. But no, that's not real. I mean, wizards are real, but aspect ratios, they're not magical. They're not hard math stuff. They're actually super simple to understand. But somehow this has become one of the most heated arguments in retro gaming. People will passionately debate ratios and integer scaling to you for 40 minutes while their spouse packs a suitcase in the background. Today, I want to answer an important question. What is the best aspect ratio? I want to settle this once and for all. We're going to go deep here. We're going to talk about what aspect ratios are, why they matter, why they don't matter, why you're right that your favorite aspect ratio is the best ratio, why you're wrong because no, it's not the best, and hopefully together we can find the answer. The fabled best aspect ratio. It's out there. We just need to be brave enough to seek the truth. It sounds like boring nerd stuff, but I'll try to make it fun for you. Isn't that right, wizard man? As you command, TechDweeb, I cast fun. Behold the fun. I have to clean this up now, don't I? Yes, it's part of the fun. Let's begin with a few quick definitions, starting with resolution, which is simply the number of pixels that are on the screen. Like if you have a screen that is 640 by 480, that means that the screen has 640 horizontal pixels and 480 vertical pixels. Aspect ratio describes the shape of the screen, and it's written as the relationship between the width and the height, expressed as a ratio, obviously. And ratios are always reduced down to their lowest whole number values. So for the 640 by 480 screen, we don't call it a 640 by 480 ratio. We divide that down to 4x3 for lots of complicated reasons that I won't get into, but that's the easy way to think about it. It's math, magical math. You sound like a math teacher. I am a math teacher. Wait, I thought you were a wizard. I can be two things. The ideal situation is where you have a screen that perfectly matches the aspect ratio of your game, or even better if your resolution is a perfect integer scale of your game. I made a whole video about integer scaling, which I'm not really going to get into here. I'll link to that video below if you want to know all about that topic, but the short version is that if you don't have a perfect resolution that is an integer of your game's resolution and you scale the game up, you're going to have some pixels that are different sizes than others, and it ends up feeling like a bit unbalanced. But sometimes you don't have a screen that is the same ratio as your game. Like if you have a 16:9 device and then you want to play a 4x3 game, you'll see that there's black bars on the side of the screen. Or if you have a 4x3 device and you play PSP, which is 16:9, you'll have black bars on the top and the bottom. That's the sacrifice that you make when you play games that don't match the ratio of your screen. You're gonna have to live with the black bars. The most common aspect ratio for retro games is 4x3, which is because that's what old CRT TVs were. Lots of TVs had pretty aggressive cropping of the edges, which is called overscan, and that kind of changed the ratio a bit. You might have noticed on some retro games that you get like garbled junk around the edge of the screen when you emulate it. That's because that part of the screen would have been cut off by the overscan. Old TVs were just imprecise when it came to stuff around the edges. You are flawed, technology, but we love you all the same. Ah! But that brings us to an important concept. The resolution versus aspect ratio doesn't paint the full picture because some old consoles were made for displays that didn't use square pixels. Old TVs had a fixed vertical resolution because those displayed images as stacked scan lines. That's these horizontal lines that you see in old TVs. But the devices attached to them could have the TV display horizontal pixels however they wanted. The pixels weren't always square. That's why if you see like a Sega Genesis game running at its native resolution, it'll be a different shape than a Super Nintendo running at its native resolution. They were both displayed on the same screen, and on those screens they did look like the same ratio, but under the hood they were based on different pixel dimensions. The famous examples of this are Nintendo and Super Nintendo and TurboGrafx-16. Internally, these systems often render at something close to an 8:7 pixel aspect ratio, but they were designed to be displayed on 4:3 CRT TVs, which stretch the image horizontally. The messy part here is that some games were definitely designed with this ratio in mind, but some weren't. They were just stretched all the time and nobody cared. So with those systems, some games look better at their native 8:7 ratio and some look better at 4:3. Also, one more kind of messy part is that for some systems, the emulators can apply widescreen hacks that expand the game viewport and turn 4:3 games into widescreen games. You can usually find this in the emulator settings. There will be an option for it there. Also, when you're playing GameCube or Wii on Dolphin, not only can you use widescreen hacks to make the games run widescreen, you can actually use that same hack to make them run narrow screen. So the emulator will crop off the left and the right of the 3D image but keep the UI intact. That's how you can play GameCube games full screen on square devices without squashing the image. The other option to get a full screen image is to stretch the game to fill the screen. And I'm not here to pass value judgments, but I think we can all agree that if you stretch a game, then you are a terrible person and you should feel bad. You shall not stretch your games. Yeah, I'm not. Chill out. You were thinking about it though. I mean, I get it. You paid for the pixels and you want to use them, but you are changing the art. Games were never meant to look like this. So like, you do you, but also, if you do this, then go to hell. So since the best ratio for your games is the one that they were designed around, then logically the best handheld ratio for those games is going to be one that matches the games. And ideally, the pixel dimensions of the screen are a perfect integer scale for the games you'll be playing the most on it. Again, check out my video on integer scaling if you need to know more about that. So let's go through the common ratios and the handhelds that I would recommend for those. I have reviews for all these devices on my channel, and I'll have links for all these down in the thingy below if you want to learn more or pick any of these up. So if you want to play Game Boy, that is a 9:10 ratio system. Almost a square. The Ahhh Pocket Vert and the Analog Pocket are two devices that have pixel-perfect Game Boy scaling. However, lots of squarish devices are still great. I really like the Ahhh DMG and the RG Cube XX. The new RG Rotate is pretty swell too. The downside with those doodads is that wider screen stuff will have some black bars on the top and the bottom. For 4:3 stuff, you are spoiled for choice. Most retro handhelds are 4:3 screens, which is because most retro games were made for 4:3 TVs. So grab yourself a Miu Mini Plus or the Amberlic XX devices or a TrimUI Brick or any of the other bazillion 4:3 handhelds that are out there. That said, most of the cheaper doodads are 640 by 480 resolution, which is a good resolution for integer scaling for some systems, but not others. My favorite way to play 4:3 games is on Amberlic's latest 4:3 devices because they have a very high resolution screen, which means that integer scaling is less of an issue, for reasons that I explain in my video. My top pick is the RG477V. That's my current favorite retro style handheld actually, but I also love the 476H and the 477M, or the RG Slide. They all use the same screen. 16:9 games are systems like PSP, Wii, Nintendo Switch, and GameCube and PS2 with widescreen hacks, and PC games are usually 16:9. Most really high-end handhelds are 16:9 screens. Just keep in mind that if you're running older games on these doodads, you'll have some black bars on the sides of the screen, more or less depending on what you're playing. Game Boy Advance is a unique system in the retro game world because it used a 3:2 ratio screen, and there's a few handhelds that have a 3:2 screen that are perfect for GBA. The budget pick is the Powkiddy V10. The Amberlic RG34XX and the SP are both cheap and really great for GBA. On the high end, we have the Ahhh Pocket Micro Classic and the Ahhh Ace, which is amazing for GBA and also just an amazing all-around device. One of my all-time favorites actually. Game Boy Advance also scales pretty nicely on 16:9 devices. You don't get much by way of the black bars there. Really, if you're playing mostly retro console stuff, get a 4:3 device. That just makes the most sense. And hey, if you want the best experience, you can always get more than one handheld. Get a different device in each ratio and then you'll be covered. But like, only a total lunatic would buy multiple different devices that all do the same stuff. A total lunatic. You are beyond redemption. Go back to the shadows from whence you came. I'm here too. So, now we come to it. The frickin' point of the video, finally. What is the best ratio? I don't mean the best ratio for a specific game. Obviously, the best ratio for a game is usually the ratio that it was designed for. I mean, if I had to pick one, the ideal ratio, the ratio that all devices would use in a perfect world. There's obviously a lot of subjectivity here, but there are some objective truths. Side-scrollers benefit from seeing more left and right. Vertical games don't need a bunch of extra width. Different situations flavor different shapes, but if we ignore all that, what is the platonic ideal rectangle? When this gets brought up, people always mention the golden ratio. That's like ancient math stuff that humans decided feels weirdly pleasing to look at. It's based on the Fibonacci sequence, and it's roughly 1.6 times wider than tall. Our brains are like hardwired to find that ratio pleasing. We see this ratio all over the place in nature. Seashells, hurricanes, spider webs, the spirals of galaxies, and probably like half the stuff in your backyard. We use it in art, architecture, but basically everywhere. Seriously, go to like the grocery store with a measuring tape and you'll find that most of the boxes are 3:2 ratio. It just pleases our caveman monkey brains in ways that we don't like to talk about. The closest common screen ratio to the golden ratio is actually 16:10, then 3:2. 16:9 isn't even that close. So if someone says 16:9 is the best because it's the golden ratio, you'll see people say that, and you can basically just ignore everything else they have to say because they don't know what they're talking about. But also, people often think that because the golden ratio matters in art and games contain art, then games should use the golden ratio too. This is an area that I have lots of thoughts about. I don't mention this often, but I went to school for art. I have a certificate, a diploma, and a bachelor's degree in fine art. I've studied enough art theory to become deeply annoying at parties whenever the golden ratio comes up. So just trust me when I tell you, the golden ratio has basically nothing to do with ideal game ratios. Games contain art, but games aren't wall decorations. They serve a different purpose to art. They're viewpoints into worlds. Through some magical mix of game artistry and our own imagination, we project ourselves into these spaces. That's very different from a painting hanging above your aunt's toilet. Also, humans don't see in ratios. We see more like a weird fisheye blob, but with super wide peripheral vision. We perceive the world much wider than taller. That's partly why ultra-wide monitors feel so immersive. Hollywood movies use wide formats too. More width can feel more natural and make us feel like we're there. But handhelds are different. You're not holding an RG35XX 6 inches from your eyeballs while pretending to physically inhabit Chrono Trigger. You're holding a handheld rectangle and looking at a game. So for handhelds, the question isn't about aesthetics. It's more about what ratio lets me play the most stuff while wasting the least amount of screen. And there isn't one perfect answer because games aren't uniform little creatures. Doom doesn't want the same ratio as Tetris. Nintendo DS doesn't want the same ratio as PSP. Different genres and eras want different things, but if I'm forced to pick one ratio to rule them all, and in the darkness bind them. One ratio for everything from Game Boy to PSP to Android games, PC games, Game Boy Advance, Super Nintendo. I think it's 3:2. That's my answer. Not because it's magical, not because Fibonacci created the perfect rectangle, just because it sits in the middle. It's wide enough that widescreen games don't have huge black bars on the top and bottom, and narrow enough that old 4x3 stuff doesn't end up with huge black bars on the sides. It's the least offensive compromise, the most neutral. Ah, but TechDweeb, what about vertical shooters though? Well, you could always rotate the device, like this. Gasp, like magic. Are you a wizard too? Yeah, I think I might be. Then let us discard our earthly robes and become as rectangles before the cosmos. I'm not that kind of wizard. So that's my answer. My one-size-fits-all retro handheld ratio is 3:2. It's not the golden ratio, it's like the beige ratio. And if you disagree, let me know in the comments, so I can ban you. So there you go. After all this, after ancient Greek geometry, art school trauma, and a wizard turning me into a rectangle, what's the best aspect ratio? Well, there isn't one. Use whatever shaped device matches the games you want to play the most. 4x3 is always a safe bet. Squarish devices are good for Game Boy. 16x9 are better for modern stuff. It's not about which is best. It's about what makes the most sense for the games you'll be playing. But if I had to pick one ratio for a handheld that has to do everything, a hypothetical best, I'm going 3x2. Not because it's perfect, not because the math gods decreed it, just because it offends the fewest games. It's the polite ratio. And as a Canadian, that is irrationally appealing to me. At the end of the day though, play whatever makes you happy. Integer scale, fill the screen, shaders, bezels, upside down while hanging from a tree. It honestly doesn't matter. Just have fun and you'll be doing just fine. Yeah, play however you want. We're all friends here. I stretched Mario Kart 64 once. Get out.